The US B-24 Liberators are flying over the Pacific Ocean in the opening scene of the film, which takes place during World War II. The men are on their way to carry out a bombing mission against the island of Nauru, which is under Japanese control. They are being commanded by Bombardier Louis Emperini. Louis gives the order to launch an airstrike as they come closer to their objective, and his crew complies, successfully detonating the explosives. Shortly later, the aircraft is attacked by many Japanese fighter jets, causing damage to their aircraft. Pilot Phil tells Louis that their brakes have failed and that their base is 5 hours distant. The soldiers return to their base. Despite having hundreds of rounds fired at their craft, they make an attempt to land, but the aircraft's problems make it nearly impossible. The landing gear tires separate and begin to squeal on the ground. Despite this obstacle, Phil succeeds in stopping the plane at the very end of the runway. After then, the action jumps to a flashback when a young Italian-American named Louis is seen residing in Torrance, California. He seems like a brat who gets into trouble all the time and gets followed by the cops. He consumes alcohol, smokes, and even engages in theft at such a young age. Louis is frequently made fun of by other American kids his age since he is an Italian refugee. Additionally, he fights with them frequently, necessitating the intervention of the police. One day, Louis is sipping his vodka while watching his older brother play baseball from the bleachers. He is apprehended by a guard shortly after, so he flees to avoid conflict. He realizes he has the ability to be a runner when his older brother Pete occurs to watch him sprinting quickly. Pete chooses to coach him as a result and supports him in doing so. After some prodding, Louis eventually agrees despite his initial reluctance. He continues to improve as the years go by, winning every race competition in which he takes part. As a result, he is dubbed the Torrance Tornado. He once sets a new American record for high school kids when he finished a 1-mile race in 4 minutes. Louis gets invited to represent the United States at the 1936 Summer Olympics in Berlin. As a result of his success, he gives his brother a heartfelt hug and says thank you for everything before leaving for the same. Pete offers a wise lesson when he says that a single painful moment can be exchanged for a lifetime of glory. The action then shifts to Louis competing in a 5,000-meter event on the day of the Olympics. His family listens to him participate as the race gets underway while seated next to their radios. The competition is fierce in the early laps as Louis is overtaken by the other strong competitors, but after a while, he gives it everything he's got and charges ahead of many other runners. Even though he placed 8th at the end of the race, he breaks the previous world record by completing the last lap in under 56 seconds. He still wants to take home the gold at the next Olympics, which will take place in Tokyo in 1940. Nevertheless, the start of the Second World War shatters his goal. When Louis returns to the present, he finds Phil in prayer to God following the airplane's successful landing. He doesn't seem to be very concerned about the prayers because he doesn't seem to have much confidence in God. He starts sprinting beside a jeep to continue his workout the very next day. Additionally, he makes an impression on his fellow soldiers by breaking his personal 4-minute mile record. Louis and his team are given a new task one day, finding a missing airplane and saving its survivors. After it is fixed using spare components, they are handed the same old plane. In spite of this, the group, which now included a few additional members, started working toward their goal. When one of the engines dies in midair, the plane's instability is revealed. Another engine fails as they attempt to salvage as much as they can, sending the craft plummeting into the water. As a result, only 3 crew members, Louis, Phil, and Mac, remain alive after 8 of them die. After climbing aboard the inflatable rafts, the 3 of them take some time to collect themselves. Mac feels completely lost and thinks they have little chance of surviving, but the other 2 beg him to hold on to hope. Their meager supplies consist of a bottle of water and a few chocolates. Louise then makes the decision that they will only have 2 sips of water a day and eat 1 piece of chocolate in the morning and 1 at night. They fight against the bitter cold and go off to sleep as darkness comes on the boat. The sound of an approaching jet wakes the 3 the next morning. They quickly try to signal it with a flare gun and die, but their efforts are ignored. Louis finds out shortly after that Mac has eaten all of the chocolates in the boxes, leaving them empty. Louis is enraged by this since it leaves them with nothing, but he restrains his rage since he believes that fighting is pointless. The 3 then struggle to survive in what seems like an unending ocean, going days without food or drink. A seagull lands on their boat as they are fighting. The warriors are so hungry that they seize and eat its meat right away. They throw up as a result of their stomachs being unable to contain it. They then devise a second scheme in which they use the flesh of the same seagull as bait to capture a fish. After that, they each take a bite out of it, which gives them a brief sense of satisfaction. Their position gets worse and worse as time goes on. In addition, they experience a sea storm one night that leaves them feeling as though their lives are slipping away from them. Lewis goes to prayer at this crucial time, promising to serve God for the rest of his life if he can save them now. They miraculously make it through the storm, and rain falls the next morning. The staff cheerfully fills their receptacles with the drops from the sky. They successfully capture a shark over the course of the following few days, giving them much needed food. The crew notices another plane in the skies on their 27th day at sea. With a newfound sense of hope, they shoot their flare gun to draw attention, and the jet turns around. Their joy is short-lived, though, as it soon becomes apparent that a Japanese aircraft is shooting at them. The crew dives into the ocean in a last-ditch attempt to save themselves, avoiding shark attacks as well as gunshots. The plane takes off shortly after, and the three swim back to the surface. Their inflatable boats are damaged by the gunshots, even though they manage to avoid the danger. In a hurry, they seal the holes to keep themselves afloat and protect themselves from shark attacks. The three of them stay on the same little boat for the duration of their time together. They have been stuck in the ocean for more than 40 days. As Mac's health worsens even further, he gradually becomes starved to death. His body is wrapped by Lewis and Phil and submerged in water. After that, the two that are still alive manage to hang on, but their health has gotten worse to the point that they are unable to stand or speak. They are apprehended right away on the 47th day of their struggle after they stumble onto a ship that, regrettably, belonged to the Japanese forces. Currently detained as POWs on Kwajalein Atoll, Lewis and Phil are housed in separate, dimly lit cells. They are given rice balls there, which is a limited nutrition, which they devour voraciously. A Japanese colonel questions the two American flyers one day, wanting knowledge about the Norden bomb site and more recent bombers. After obtaining some information from them, Louis and Phil are taken with other inmates to another camp near Tokyo. As they arrive, they are split up in the large throng and taken to several POW camps. Louis is placed under the direction of Corporal Matsuhiro Watanabe, a cold-blooded officer at a Mori detention center. Watanabe claims that since every prisoner is considered an enemy of Japan, they will all be handled as such. As Watanabe is describing the laws of the prison, he notices that Louis is staring at him directly, so he strikes him with a hefty wooden staff. The new inmates are made to stand for an entire day before being brought to their camp hut, where Louis meets other American soldiers. When the inmates are gathered on the ground the following day, Watanabe selects those who possess certain skills. Observing Louis's athletic background, Watanabe challenges a Japanese officer to a race. Louis gives another thrashing after collapsing to the ground, obviously weary from not eating. Given how frequently and violently Watanabe attacks him, it is clear that he despises him the most. In addition to working hard in the camp, the American soldiers obtain information about the war's advancement from publications that the Japanese had stolen. A Marine soldier monitors American positions, but the Japanese soldiers quickly apprehend him. He is therefore brutally beaten, with Lewis and the other inmates looking on helplessly. A few days later, Louis gets the chance to certify his survival by sending a message home. It turns out that he has already been designated as killed in action by the US government. After giving his consent, he is brought to a radio station to give his family a message. In order to receive some leniency from the US government throughout the conflict, he is also compelled to fabricate claims that he is receiving fair treatment. Lewis is then served delicious dinner after a lengthy wait. He is subsequently instructed to broadcast another message that contains anti-American propaganda, thus this generosity has a cost. The Japanese men also promise him a wonderful life in Japan if he accepts their offer, but when he refuses to compromise his morals, he is sent back to the POW camp. When they return, Watanabe tells Lewis that he is strong like him, and that if they hadn't been adversaries, they would have been friends. Watanabe, however, has every prisoner punch Lewis in the face one by one, because he defied the Japanese order. His face gets pummeled and bruised after this all-day hitting spree. To entertain the Japanese soldiers, inmates are given the task of staging a performance based on Cinderella one day. During this, Watanabe tells Lewis, who is sitting next to him, that he has been promoted to sergeant and would be departing Amori the following day. Lewis is asked to congratulate him on the promotion, but he doesn't say anything. After his departure, the camp's inmate population has much better lives. The pleasant times, however, are short-lived when the Allies attack the nearby city, forcing the prisoners to be sent to another camp known as Naotsu. Lewis faints briefly upon seeing Watanabe, who is also the camp's leader, as they arrive. Watanabe hits Lewis without cause after giving the same speech. The inmates are forced to load big bags of coal onto the ship, which is significantly more taxing than it was the day before. As the grueling effort continues, some guys die after falling over railings due to the combined weight of their baggage and exhaustion. One day, Lewis stops working because he is so tired. After that, he is taken to Watanabe, who punishes him by making him raise and hold a big wooden beam over his head. Watanabe commands a guard to shoot Lewis if he drops it despite Lewis's efforts. Lewis endures physical hardship and manages to hold it up for several hours as a result. Every prisoner is focused on Lewis, and they are all quietly applauding him. While courageously staring into the sergeant's eyes, Lewis raises the beam even higher than Watanabe anticipates him to descend. Watanabe, offended by his attitude, gives him a severe beating and leaves him there for the whole night. A higher-ranking Japanese official declares a ceasefire the following day and gives the prisoners orders to bathe in the nearby river. At first, the captives think they will be put to death. However, as they enter the ocean, an American bomber plane soars overhead, signaling the end of the war. Following a triumphant celebration by all of the inmates, supplies are shortly dropped into the camp. Lewis searches Watanabe's apartments during the festivities, but it appears that he has already left. After that, he takes a seat and looks at a photo of Watanabe and his father when they were younger. Following this, Lewis and the other prisoners of war fly back to their native country, where their relatives are waiting for them at the airport. A slideshow that shows Lewis's actual post-war life. He got married and had 2 kids is shown at the end of the movie. Phil lived as well and got married. After being included in the list of the top 40 most sought Japanese war criminals, Watanabe fled and avoided prosecution.